Hello guys, TKG is here for your comfortable LostArk life. In this video, I'd like to cover the update and improvements of the LostArk KR, as the KR region update progression are quite slightly ahead than the global, so I thought it'd be great to share some of those infos for your LostArk journey. Now follow me, I'll show you what you need. Today, I'm going to cover the most discussed issues in the Korean community. In fact, there is a sense of crisis in the LostArk, not only in the community, but also in-game. So in this video, I'm going to cover the reason and the cause right now. First, or maybe the progression factor that has been covered a lot in my videos, something that many people always point out in LostArk. In fact, as I have covered in many videos, the current progression system of the LostArk is quite contradictory. So, to be honest, it has RPG elements, but it has excluded the sense of accomplishment of progress, which is the biggest element of RPG. The reason for this is that the Korean community currently cites these factors. The biggest reason is that the value of in-game goods is decreasing too quickly, and the update policy that alleviates the happiness of the system is weird. First, let's briefly talk about this easing update policy. In fact, even in the past, LostArk's progression factors were quite unpleasant. From Elixir to Transcendence, Advanced Honing, and now Karma. Many of them were quite unpleasant. The randomness was very strong and it depended on luck, and at the same time required a lot of gold, which was quite a burden to the players. But here's the problem. Players who made it through something too difficult are not rewarded for it. In fact, what do you actually get in return for all this hard work? A new raid, a long and hard new weekly homework, and a new progression vectors, which cost another gold and effort. In addition, this alleviation update is also making a lot of players feel deprived. So if you spend a lot of money and gold to get ahead, there should be something in return. But as I said before, you get a long weekly new raid and another piece of contents that you have to spend your money again. So for example, if we are the players who are ahead, in a way we are cheated. We thought we were promised a bigger reward, but in reality, we just used much more money and got less reward. This was the general direction of the LostArk updates, and it has been that way up until now. So what do players do? Will you be the vanguard who has nothing to gain from this difficult progression, or will you just stop progressing and just farm gold and wait for the next alleviation update? The majority of players choose the latter. So, in other words, it became an RPG game that excluded these progression factors, because it's much more efficient to just stay where you are. Needless to say, there was an update that was hostile to whale players with weapons like Sidrills. And some really ridiculous business models have emerged recently. For example, these packages that are being sold now are materials needed for honing. I'm not joking, this is serious. The game is currently intentionally reducing the amount of in-game goods supply while increasing the amount needed for progressions. And they are selling players a kind of paid package to get these insufficient goods. It's honestly a bit absurd and weird. Actually, the previous business model was mainly derived from card packs, because the Light of Salvation card set was needed by everyone and was needed in every raid. So everyone wanted to have this card set, and as a result, it became a pretty attractive business model. But that was during Season 2. But this time, when we changed to Season 3, they changed the business model structures, because Korean players actually closed their wallet when it came to card pack. The newly added card set are nice to have, but they are not essential. So most players decided not to spend money on card pack anymore. At the same time, the name is a bit lame. Anyway, because of this situation, they decided to create a new profit structure by selling essential materials. But the biggest problem with this business model is that it changed the value of in-game materials and goods at will. To be honest, I understand spending money on games. I think that is possible business model to directly purchase things you want while playing a game. After all, game companies need to make money, but this business model is quite irresponsible. And the point is that it is excessive. In addition, due to the abuse of this business model, we can see that the value of in-game goods is rapidly decreasing in the Korean region. In other words, as the value is decreasing infinitely, the value of users who originally had a certain level of value or who had those goods is not being preserved its value at all. For example, right now, unlike what was shown in the previous video, the value of tier 4 gem is rapidly decreasing. This is because the shortage of gem was continuously sold as a paid package. To borrow an expression that is currently being circulated in the community, the fact that someone who sold everything they had about 2 or 3 months ago and came back can do much more than the players who has been playing the game steadily until now. And this shows how seriously the current economic structure of the LostArk is broken. This resulted in a sense of deprivation and disappointment for the players who were ahead, and the progression factors for the players who were following behind were simply excluded their character progressions. Just looking at this situation is honestly absurd. To put it simply, the reward design is broken, but you have to progress. But the progressing costs a lot of gold, money, and time, but we can't directly increase the rewards such as gold. So buy a paid package for owning. This vicious cycle repeats. And back to the policy, let me say this. This series of events, this process of intentionally leading the players is extremely unpleasant. It is ridiculous that you need the help of 5 characters to progress 1 character. But it is inevitable that you are being led to buy a paid package to make up for this deficiency. And what do you get in return for paying this much gold? There are high fatigue rate, additional progression factors, and crucially, more risk factors. For example, there is no exact or guaranteed information about when it will be reset or when a new season will suddenly start. So it is more efficient to just stay still. Since the update itself is not perfect, it intentionally becomes an additional factor that deceives the players. If it happened once or twice, it is okay, but if it continues, most players just sit there and enjoy with light and cheap price rather than progressing further. I don't know how this can be called as a game. In addition, if the added progress elements are released with defects, the player's feedback is not reflected right away. They watch it for a long time and change it when a certain statistic is accumulated. But this is called accumulating statistic and it takes several months. It takes several months, not a week or 2, to fix it again. So there's no way the players would know that it's defective. So they just sit there and do nothing. It's going to be nerfed later anyway. And a lot of the information, that is, the information shown in the game, is considered to be unreliable, which is also considered a significant problem. For example, if you look at this raid information window, all you see is the entry level. But in reality, if you just meet this entry level, it would be great to be able to go with this just level, but that's not all. There are so many other factors that need it to be fulfilled. So even if they are the same level, they are actually different. They are just the same level. But in reality, they are different build with different performance. To put it simply, this entry level is just for show. So the current overall structure is literally unstable. It's a structure where people can leave at any time, especially simple repetitive weekly raid are enough to lose players' interest. But if there are structural problems like this, and there are no sign of them being fixed, it's even more a problem. So it's true that there are people in the community saying that the current state of the game seems dangerous. And especially there are people saying that the game will end after the last act. Of course, there are also people saying that many people are already leaving. I think things would have been better if they had done a gentle reset before moving on to Season 3, or if they had made a soft landing while listening to the players' demand. Or rather, they should have just fixed the problem in the Season 2 rather than Season 3. The problems that had piled up exploded because they had moved on to the Season 3 so fast without warning. I just don't know, to be honest. I'm really curious about what the real intention of Season 3 was, and what they considered before starting. I'm really curious about whether the real intention was to create a new turning point for a new business model. And to be honest, I wonder if the business model they are making now is really appealing to the players. I think it's having an effect of making people sick of it. So as someone who really likes the game and has enjoyed them for a long time, I certainly think that if the game doesn't do something at this point, well, people might leave before they even see the last act. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. And always, thanks for your big support. Hope this video was a little help for your LostArk journey. And of course, if you like my videos, hit the sub for more upcoming infos. I'll come back with more useful infos in the next video.